Welcome to The State of Us. Real people with honest opinions and the future of responsible media. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
Thank you all for tuning in. We're excited to talk to you today about how technology is changing the economy. Is it mostly positive, or are there some downsides to it? Well, we're going to look at what's going on with Amazon as it's just announced the 2 locations of, I guess, HQ2 or HQ2 and 3, or I don't know how all that lingo is going to work, but we're going to look at Amazon. We're also going to talk about the company that you've never heard of, probably. It's called Five Below, and it's kind of like a Dollar General, except it focuses more on leisure items, things for fun, and how these two provide a nice contrasting example of where the economy stands. But of course, no conversation today could be complete without
your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson.
I disagree with you. I bet a lot of people have heard of Five Below.
Yeah?
That's a staple in my house for my daughters. So.
Okay. It is?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, I'm just telling you what the article
I've
said.
even been in a Five Below.
You really?
Yeah.
Okay. I've never. I hadn't heard of it till those articles.
Okay. So. Well, there you go.
I don't know. And
I guess us lowly rednecks are the ones that are getting in there.
Gotcha.
All right.
So we're also joined today, since we're talking about business and the economy, it just kind of made sense to have on John Umstead from the Business is Art podcast, author of Business is Art, and the founder of Plan Canvas, which can really help you kind of lay out and achieve everything that you're hoping to with your business. So, John, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it. And I, too, have heard of Five Below. I've never been in a Five Below store. But the first
we'll
time
have to make a date.
Yeah. I heard they're 5 times better than Dollar General.
That's right.
So. Yeah. But the first time,
Where's the
yeah. But the first time I drove past one, honestly, I thought perhaps it was a restaurant. I'm like, what is that place over there?
Okay.
And it was explained to me. So I didn't know what it was.
So the New York Times says a $2 billion question. Did New York and Virginia overpay for Amazon? And this caught my attention because, of course, we've been watching this. Lance and I have relatively close. I mean, it's not the forefront of everything we've been doing. But the New York Times says Amazon built a retail empire on low prices and free shipping. But for taxpayers, its new headquarters didn't come cheap. New York and Virginia collectively offered more than $2 billion in tax credits, rebates, and other incentives to attract the company. That figure doesn't include what could amount to hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure spending, worker training, and other government assistance. So on the one side, right, you've got economists who are criticizing the tax incentives as inefficient and unnecessary, arguing that they ultimately, make cities play kind of a tug of war against each other and leave less money for things like education, public works, and so forth. While research has shown that incentives play at most a very small role in corporate decisions, meaning governments often end up paying businesses to do what they would have done regardless. So with that, John, I guess I want to turn to you first and just kind of get an idea here before we open the discussion on what do you think it is that gets a company like Amazon to choose a location? I mean, the late night guys were having fun with this last night saying, oh yeah, New York and DC, they definitely need an economic boost because they're not already prosperous and huge. So it was a little backlash there on, okay, guys, you chose, 2 massive cities. If you weren't going to be in California, you chose like the next 2 biggest areas to do this. So what do you think is the decision factor for large corporations like this?
Well, I have a little bit of a different perspective on this, and I can take some of my professional experience and reverse it. So, in past lives, I have, and present lives, I participate in proposals for large scale, business deals. And one of the first things you do is you sit down and you determine, well, what are the win themes that we're going to bake into our proposal and weave throughout. But those win themes are preferably something that you're not just making up, but a little something about the customer. A little something about what their pain is and what they're really looking for. And then you pay attention as well to what they have put in their request for proposal. And a lot of times they'll say, we've got 5 factors that we're going to weigh your proposals on. And the first factor is, worth more than the next 3. And the last one is worth less than any of the others, so they lay it out and you have to pay attention to that. And, I'll give you a quick example and then come right back to Amazon. So I participated in a proposal, where we were trying to unseat the incumbent, and none of the 5 factors said anything about cost. They mentioned cost in the RFP, that, they were going to award to the best value. But the 5 factors they were really weighing things on had nothing to do with cost. So we paid attention to those 5 factors, whereas the incumbent paid attention to cost and basically submitted a discounted rate to the buyer. And we did not. We put a premium on our proposal and we won. And our proposal came in excess of $20 million higher than the incumbents. And we won because we paid attention to what was important to them. So now take it back to the Amazon example. Did these cities that competed for the headquarters, did they pay attention to what Amazon really wanted? Because you had some states making some pretty deep concessions, right? $8 billion plus, I think, was what Maryland. And at the end of the day, Virginia won out over them with only $1 billion in concessions. So was one state paying more attention to what it was that Amazon really wanted? I think the answer is yes. And then you add things in like, what does a company really want when they've got a large headquarters that they're going to locate somewhere? They need access to the talent pool. In some cases, they need access to transportation. Right. So those may be way more important than any tax incentives. And I think Virginia made a really nice play in saying, hey, we're going to add some coursework at our universities to create the talent pool that you need.
Kind of feeder program that they're building in there. Yeah. Which and it's interesting too, because for a company like Amazon, right? Do you think that? I mean, great, we're saving $1 billion, right? I mean, that's nice, of course. It's not like we're going to write it off. But it is interesting because so often we go to the money.
Yep. First place we go, usually.
Yeah. But a company like Amazon, I think they've demonstrated on a lot of fronts that they're not always interested in the short term make money. They're often much more interested in the long term. What can we invest in today, even if it costs us more, that in the long run pays off? So maybe that's what you're seeing with this choice too, is they're looking at and saying, yeah, we could risk it someplace like Columbus, Ohio, but at the end of the day, the long-term feasibility of these areas, New York and DC, show that they're just going to keep growing. And the space in between them just continues to merge into like this one continuous, metro area. I mean, you kind of have that going on in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach, area there. I mean, yeah, they're separate cities, but do you ever really leave the city if you drive up and down that coastline? Not much.
Right.
There's not a lot of places where it's not there. So, anything else, Lance? We got anything else why Amazon chooses these 2 cities? And they ruled out a lot of the Midwest. I mean, I was a little disappointed in, there were some other competitive offers, but maybe they were focusing on the wrong thing.
No, I think we talked about that before, in that the Midwest is really a dying area. I mean, everybody's going to the coast. That's where all the talent is. That's where the people are. We've talked about locally where every food emporium has a sign on it with open application dates and they'll hire anybody off the street. Why would you put a company somewhere where there are no really people there to work in those numbers?
Already labor shortage.
And the education piece, that John mentions that Virginia Tech's going to put in. And I just don't think, and I think too that I like what John said, they didn't take the quote best offer. So obviously Amazon wasn't looking for incentives. I mean, you could make the argument as to why offer the incentives anyway. If you're New York or Northern Virginia, if you have the best place for them to come and you, as John said, look at their requests and you meet their request, why offer them any money at all? but I guess there has to be a little bit of an enticement. But I figured Amazon would probably choose something like this anyway. Maybe Houston, I kind of thought with as fast as Houston is growing, that they might go that way.
They would have had a chance.
But then that kind of puts you out of where the population is. And I think, with this company, that's an important thing.
The only reason I was a little surprised about the choice to stay away from.
And they're two high tax areas.
Yeah.
That's the only thing when you go to the East Coast. As a company, maybe that's part one of the incentives. Or maybe Amazon makes so much money they don't care about it, but you could make a whole lot more money in states that don't have the high East Coast tax rates.
Well, not even the tax rates, or not only the tax rates, but the cost of living in general, the rate of pay that you're going to pay your employees, it's a lot higher in those areas.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, we just saw that piece the other day. I don't remember if it was the Times or the Journal or who it was, but that, there's been a lot of pushback from Middle America, everything from not quite as heavily the Midwest, but a lot of the central states, that these big technology companies, Amazon being one of them, have such a liberal lean to them that part of the country is kind of getting left behind, or that there's a bias. It's been especially, at the forefront of conversations in relation to like Facebook, where it's, all the leaders at Facebook are super liberal, and, so they can't possibly provide a platform that's fair to conservatives. So I guess they're just a little surprised, and that backlash hasn't been very hard. Conservatives are still on Facebook, right? They're not rallying and saying, we're all getting rid of our Facebooks. But it would have been a way to kind of, if they plant themselves somewhere in the middle of the country, to kind of make a statement of, no, we don't believe that the only place success is on the coasts of this country.
I honestly, when I saw the announcement, the first thought that came to my mind was, well, that's a big middle finger to President Trump, right?
Yeah.
Right. Because Amazon and Trump have famously been at odds with each other. Mm-hmm. I'm going to park my 2 new headquarters in both of your backyards. The only thing I guess surprising is that they're not in Florida as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That would have been the cherry on top, right? We're going to split it 3 ways: New York, DC, and Florida.
Yeah. Guess who's coming to town?
Yep.
I like it.
Yeah. So, okay. So that's your Amazon piece there. And obviously there's more to talk about. We want your thoughts. What did we miss on Amazon at TrueChat.org, Facebook, Twitter, pretty much all social media. And as Lance is the only one that's actually been inside one of these stores that we're talking about next, this is kind of our contrast here. And this is from the Wall Street Journal, and it was entitled Discounter Bucks Retail Trend. So many retailers are closing stores. Five Below can't seem to open them fast enough. The chain, which sells everything from basketballs to Bluetooth headphones and yoga mats for $5 or less, might be the most successful retailer you've never heard of. In fact, profits are up roughly 6-fold, and its stocks have climbed 608% to $120.31 a share through Thursday's close since the IPO. Five Below uses a formula that has largely insulated it from competition, like Amazon. The chain keeps prices low by creating products from scratch with hundreds of suppliers around the world and sells them in an environment where children want to hang out. Its own e-commerce sales are so negligible that the company doesn't break them out. Shipping often costs more than the entire purchase. So, in so many ways, they have such negligible online sales. They're opening new physical locations. And this is kind of like what we talked about with Family Dollar, Lance, in that, isn't it interesting that some of these brick and mortar stores are seeing success where other more traditional retailers like, JCPenney or Macy's, these big department stores, Sears, they're all having massive struggling, in this new world of, we've got these big stores and we can't get people in the door to buy stuff. So how does Five Below fit into this space? And obviously it's working, but why?
Well, I think you have to choose what your consumer base is. And many of these bigger markets like your JCPenney's and such, Sears, are located in those big 70s, 80s shopping malls that why would people go there and fight the crowds when they can sit at home in their PJs and place their order and never have to leave? You know what I'm saying? So, whereas the Five Belows and the Dollar Generals are going into areas where people don't have all of those options. And so therefore they still, you know, they're hitting the locations in the smaller towns, the smaller markets where people need to just run and get something. They don't want to place an order online and wait 24 hours. They need it now. Or the more depressed markets where people are still buying things. I think they're just taking a good look at a niche market that online shopping doesn't address. And I think that's why they're being successful. Now, I'm not a business guy, but that's kind of what I see those types of stores as doing. You know, you talk about how people can go to the local Dollar General here and buy candy to resell in their concession stand cheaper than they can buy it online or in one of these big Costco's or whatever. When you start to think about time costing money, gas costing money, you know, some person told me one time, long time ago, value your time. You know, if it takes you an hour to go save $3, is your time worth more than $3? Are you going to get more done that's worth more than $3 than just saving $3 out of spending an hour's worth of time? So I just think these stores like Five Below are reaching into a market, a niche market that are being missed by the bigger places. I mean, I just see what John says because he's more the business guy. That's just my take as, you know, a small town person who likes to have a place where I can run and just pick things up at a low price when I don't need a high dollar item or I don't have 24 or 48 hours to wait for something to ship to me.
I think that's part of it. You know, we live in a time where you literally, as long as you have an internet connection and, ability to receive deliveries, we live in a time where you do not have to leave the house to buy anything at all that you want or need. So there's something going on. I think the other part of it is the customer experience. You know, there are still people that like to shop, but they don't want that old experience of, well, I'm going to this store to buy that because that's the only place I can get it, and then I'll get out of there as quick as I can. You know, they're going for some kind of experience, and stores like Five Below offer some kind of experience for them. And you know, we were talking about Amazon earlier. Even Amazon is experimenting with physical locations with their Amazon Go stores. But that's still an experience as well. You know, hey, I'm going to go in. I'm not going to be bugged by anybody. I'm going to grab what I want. I'm going to walk out, and electronically, everything just magically transacts. I don't have to talk to any cashier or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't know. Lance, had you seen the thing that John's talking about? Amazon's
I've read a little bit about it. Mm-hmm.
Where you walk in and there's no cashier, and their eyes in the sky determine everything that you take with you and automatically charge you for it. Thought that was a make you nervous kind of thing.
Yeah, it does, but you know, it's not me. I won't go there, so it's okay. I mean, if that's for folks who want to experience that, I get it, and I think that's part of being in business is you have to find, are there enough customers who want the experience?
Yeah,
like John said, are there enough customers who want the experience that you're offering?
Right.
Like a Five Below is like, for me, it's kind of like an old general store. You walk in and you don't really know what's going to be there from week to week because of the nature of the business. And so it brings you in. If you like to shop and stroll and you've got, 30 minutes or an hour between doctor's visits or between luncheon date and something else, you can kind of go through and stroll and you pick up a few things and you don't spend a lot of money. But you might find that little knickknack or that scarf or whatever it is that you really weren't looking for, but it kind of catches your eye. And there are people, my wife being one of them, who loves to do those kinds of things. Yeah. She likes to walk up and down the aisles and maybe not buy anything, but she gets enjoyment out of walking up and down the aisles and just seeing what's out there. And then it sparks ideas and things that she wants to do later.
So you don't go... Five Below is kind of, you don't go to get something you need. You go to find something you want.
Well, I'm saying there is that, right. like John said, the experience.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes they carry some staple items, but a lot of times you just kind of cruising to see. It's kind of like going to an Odd Lots or Big Lots or whatever they're called now. You know, they have some basic items, but it's constantly changing. So it brings you in every week because you don't know what they might have bought a shipload of that you'd be interested in.
Yeah. Now, I don't go for the knickknacks, but I do go for the paddywhacks. So
there you go. I like that. See, we got to have him on more often. You're probably lost, you know.
He's very punny.
Yeah.
on his show.
You know, I like punnies.
Yeah.
I like being punny too.
But you know, before we started the show, Justin was talking about Five Below having a very kid friendly environment, and so it creates an experience for them too. And if you think about the Sears and the JCPenney's and the traditional stores like that, mall stores, they really aren't. It's kind of a miserable experience to have to bring your kids through a store like that.
I mean, they used to have, you know, they even went to, before they started to fail, having the play areas for kids and the trains and trying to offer something for the poor 5-year-old or younger that's being dragged from store to store all day long.
Yeah.
You know, the food court experience, all that kind of stuff. And you kind of, if you're trying to shop, you look at those poor little guys and girls and you're like, oh, this is not your day, is it? You know, it's a good point.
Yeah. The other interesting thing too is a lot of these Five Below stores, at least as I was kind of looking them up, are following the new Dollar General, Family Dollar model of they have their own building. You know, so and this is a totally different.
Yes, they're separate.
This is a totally different, right?
You have an entrance and the exit. You're not going out into a mall or from a mall.
And the really interesting thing is the whole reason, right, that the quote unquote advantage of the mall, the thinking was, well, it's all covered and you can walk from store to store and we can put stuff out between stores, you know, food and whatever, so that you can have a convenient experience. But interesting how millennials and Gen X, and we'll see what happens with Gen Z following the millennials, how they're changing this. And if you go to one of the newest places on the east side of Columbus, in one of the more affluent areas, the mall there isn't called a mall. It's called a town center. And I mean, the name's very appropriate in that there's not much that's under the same roof per se. There are all these stores that are, you know, built right up against each other, but often have a different facade. And to get to them, you have to walk outside. So it gives you this very small town. You can parallel park out in front of the stores, you know, but there's a huge parking garage behind it all. Because of course you can never find a spot on the street because there's a whole bunch of people, but it's almost like they're duplicating the charm of the small town shopping experience and putting it in a place that is convenient to get to in a big city, you know? So you enter this like neighborhood, which was all designed and built from the beginning, you know, that duplicates, and there's these little courtyards with bricks, you know, and little places to eat. And there's a whole bunch of chain stuff, but there's also these stores that, you know, you don't find anywhere else. They're one of a kind.
Do they have the 2-foot high, the 24-inch high curb? Like the small towns do, where you bang your door in now, but was made for the Model T that you had to step up off the running boards. No, you're describing my hometown where I grew up.
Yep.
That's what happened. You parallel parked, you had the downtown. But as the new cars came in the 60s and 70s, people got mad because the curbs were
too high,
12 to 18 inches off the road because of the old running board cars that you step up into. That's what you needed to step out of those cars onto the sidewalk. But now that we made, you know, in the 60s and 70s, made cars lower to the ground, people were constantly scraping their doors on those high curbs. Yes.
Yeah.
But,
interesting.
You know, there's to your point as well, Justin. I think there's an additional psychology that's applied that is for the proprietors of those stores. And that's, you know, in the mall, it's very easy to escape that store that you just went into, right? And go to the next one.
Yep.
But in this model, you're in the store. And if you want to go to the next store, you got to walk out the door, walk down the sidewalk, and go find that other store. And you can apply that same psychology to electronic stores. And I just went through this with an analyst that was taking a look at my own website, and I had several links to other places. And they're like, why are you sending people away from what effectively is your store? You've got them here. Keep them here. Don't send them off somewhere else. And
Mhm.
I would thought, well, I'm doing them a favor. I'm giving them additional resources. And the people looking at it were like, that's not what you want
Right,
to
don't
do.
give them a choice to leave.
Yeah, keep them here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this
Well,
looks good. And they click and then they'll come back to you.
Right.
interesting too, because of the outdoor model, the busiest shopping time of the year that we're in now, this November, December time, in the northern part of the United States, walking outside is not always a pleasant thing this time of year. It's cold. It can be bitterly windy here in Ohio. And so you have, like you said, it's that keeping them in the store. There's this subconscious, well, I'm here. I feel like I should buy something. I spent X amount of time in the store. I got to buy something. Or I'll feel bad. And then the other side of, well, I don't really want to go back outside because it's cold,
But it also brings back the nostalgia
Yes.
for us older people here.
So
the
you get all three
nostalgia of
things
going into
working.
the store all bundled up. You pick up your packages, you get the things you want, and then you go out and fight the cold and the snow to get to the next piece. And that makes it feel like it's Christmas.
Yeah.
And it brings back, stopping and going out with mom and dad or whatever and getting some hot chocolate somewhere or whatever and warming up because you are constantly going in and out of the weather. So it's also that nostalgic piece. I mean, I understand what you're saying.
Right.
You keep them in the store, but fighting the conditions and going outside, that's part of the nostalgia of shopping at the holiday season in the colder environs.
You've got a multi-tier process here that's they're all working in tandem, to create this effective experience that kind of upends the convenience of an indoor shopping mall. And so now we're going to look at what the data tells us about the economy and where things stand as it's in relation to tech. Because so often we have these conversations and it seems kind of elusive. How is technology really changing things? And that's what we're going to look at. But before we get into that, Lance, what are we trying to accomplish here at True Chat?
At True Chat?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant with this show. No, at True Chat. Well, at True Chat, our mission is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations.
You had to really turn today to get to the poster. You're in a
Well, I
different
only looked at it for half of what I was saying.
Okay.
Because it's so short.
This is easier
now.
than the old one.
Sure, it's so short. I can, boom, I get it after like 3 words.
That
I
recall.
jump right in there.
Yeah. So if people don't think we're upholding that mission, what do they do?
Well, they can call me, right, and leave a message at our
Yes.
extension, or they can contact the ethics department.
Uh-huh.
And I'd rather you go to me first because I really don't like the ethics department getting contacted. But you can contact ethics here at True Chat.
Don't like the oversight.
And let them know and say, these guys really aren't being honest and open, and which I can't believe that. But you can read us like a book. But if you have concerns, let us know and they'll investigate and we'll either be found innocent or have our wrists slapped, and you'll hear the changes on the next podcast.
Excellent.
All
So
right.
We've already had a caller saying they did not like that knick-knack paddywhack
Knick-knack
pun.
paddywhack thing?
Yeah, it's a,
They probably don't get it.
Too much of a dad pun,
They're too
and,
young.
yeah.
Yeah. Got to hang around grandpa more often.
So the data and the economy. The email is ethics@truechat.org in case somebody out there actually does want to send an email. But
Well, don't they know that?
how would they know that?
Because they listen to the show.
Well, you're assuming that everybody listening, knows what to do.
Well, true. With John on here, we probably have just really
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
ratings just
went through the
skyrocketed,
roof. I
right?
mean, we've got a whole group that never listened to us. So this is kind of like a tryout for us.
I was on his show I was on the show yesterday with
Yep.
him, and I plugged it.
So kind of like cross branding.
Yes,
Yep.
Shameless self-plug. I was like, hey, everybody that
I'm like
listens
Peyton
here,
Manning. I'm in a band. We're cross branding.
you got to come over. Yeah. So good opportunity too. If you want to listen to Business is Art and get more insight on topics like this, the place to do it is the Business is Art podcast, or pick up a copy of the book Business is Art. And that's on Amazon.
It
Speaking
is
of
on Amazon.
So, you could pick up a copy of the book and listen to the podcast, and you'll just be business literate in no time.
That's right.
So we're looking at what the data tells us. Tech versus labor. Manufacturing employment has shrunk as productivity has increased with the aid of technology. So I was funny. I was actually having this conversation the other day with my father, because I was talking about, the media likes to report all the time on, these lazy millennials, these self-entitled millennials, this, that, and the other, aren't they just the worst? And it's ironic because, of course, the people that are saying these things are also the people that are of the same age that they're, mostly reaching in their audiences. But regardless of that, I said, that's all fine. It all is what it is. You tell me whatever that data says. That's fine. We'll accept it. But you cannot deny that the data also tells us that under the millennials as the largest working group and Generation X, we have seen the most significant increase in productivity in the American economy since the Industrial Revolution. So for all the baby boomers out there, I think 2 of which are on this show. I don't know, John. I don't know if you make the cut or not.
I'm right on that borderline.
You're close.
Yeah.
You're one of those, maybe. Don't know for sure, but maybe.
I relate more to Gen X.
Okay. Yeah. Well, see, you can jump on the, I'm part of the productivity. You're an old Gen X.
My musical taste is probably more millennial.
Okay. Well, look at you crossing the generations. You're going to go teach some millennials here in a little bit, probably.
Yep, some youngsters.
Yes. So I thought that was interesting because what we're looking at here, and this data is from the Wall Street Journal, well, they're the ones reporting on it, but the source is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. You have U.S. manufacturing employment at around, say, 17 million in 2000, and now in 17 looks like the last time it was reported, you're at closer to like 12 million. So you have a drop there, but the index of manufacturing productivity, so same industry, in 2000, productivity is at 70. And in 2017, productivity is at a little over 100. So increase in productivity, decrease in overall employment. So that's one of those ways that the industry is being helped. Now, another common thing that we look at a lot of times is what about, jobs? How does this factor in here? Because isn't technology destroying more jobs than it's creating? Well, that's where we looked at e-commerce versus brick and mortar retail. And the number of jobs created by e-commerce in 2017 far outpaced the number of jobs lost in the brick and mortar industry. So there again, upending that kind of general thought that it's negative because it's stealing, it's a net loss of jobs, which it's not actually. So far we have a significant net gain. The specific being that there was a loss of, so this is based on full-time employment, a 3-month average, and includes electronic shopping and mail order houses and warehousing and storage. So what that means is, like, if you're talking about Amazon, jobs created also would include their warehouses, and all of their delivery, all of the stuff that's associated with that as an online business counts as part of jobs created versus jobs lost. They're creating a positive, probably say 300,000 as opposed to a loss of only about 100,000 brick and mortar in 2017. So again, you can do the math there. You have a nice margin of an increase. So what do you make of this, guys? Let me know.
Well, I've always subscribed to the school of thought, and keep in mind, I began my career in technology, so I've always had a bent toward it. But I've always kind of operated with the assumption that, as technology advances, the jobs just change, but they don't go away. Do we need somebody to do this particular task anymore because we have a robot that can do it? Yeah, that's true. But there are other things that technology and robots can't handle. So I've always kind of had a bent that way. And I have a little bit of nerdy stuff I'd like to share with you guys, but I don't want to jump in. So if you've got any
no, go ahead. That's what I
Lance wants to hear the nerd stuff.
I do. That's what I was waiting to hear. That's what I've been sitting here for. I've got my nerd hat on. I'm ready to go.
All right. Well, so here it is. And let me preface this by saying I'm not a physicist. I don't hang in the circles that physicists hang in, and I'm not a physicist groupie. But I recently attended a conference in which one of the keynote speakers was a gentleman named Dr. Michio Kaku, I think it's Kaku, K-A-K-U, is kind of a renowned theoretical physicist. And he was a really entertaining guy, obviously very brilliant. He has several books that he's written. One of them is Physics of the Impossible. And that has been turned into at least a short series on the Discovery Channel. So check him out and check out some of the stuff that he talks about. But one of the things that he presented in his keynote was Moore's Law, which I previously had not heard of. Maybe you guys have, but it basically is kind of this view that every couple of years, technological power doubles. So every 2 years, and this has been going on for decades. And to drive that point home, he held up his smartphone and he said, do you know that I'm holding more technological power in my hand right now than what was available and used to land Neil Armstrong on the moon? And, and put some of it into perspective for you. But his point of view also is that, technology as we know it, we'll find more applications for technology as we know it, but we're almost at the end of Moore's Law being applicable. We're starting to trail off, and Moore's Law is running out of runway, and with binary technology. What's coming next, and it's a few years down the road, is quantum computing. And once quantum really becomes commercially viable, then we're going to see technology exponentially leap forward. And one of the criticisms that he hears a lot is that at that point, we're going to lose a lot of jobs. And his position is, no, we're not. It's just going to be more of the same. We're going to continue to change the jobs that are necessary, but there are certain things that, in his viewpoint, and he's an expert, right? There's certain things in his viewpoint that are never going to be replaced with technology. And he used lawyers as an example. You're never going to see a robot arguing a case in court, and anything that has anything to do with emotions and reading people. It's never going to go away, never going to be replaced by technology.
You mean it's not likely that what we're doing right now is going to be replaced by a computer?
Right.
We'll just get a Lance droid and set it in his place and say, okay, argue Lance's point for us today. Thanks.
Yeah, because even in a quantum world, it's still computation.
Yeah. And that's the basis.
It still only does what it's told to do by humans. Mm-hmm. I mean, by whatever you plug into it.
Mm-hmm. And that's always been it's a different philosophical debate about, that age old, what makes us human question. Because you have to answer that, I think, to talk about, when do we cross that line into, artificial intelligence that is truly as capable as human intelligence.
It's time for all I could think of while John was saying all that is I'm shaking my head like, yep, that totally makes sense. Not even knowing what it is. Yep. But that makes sense. It's time for another conversation on universal basic income.
Yes.
Because I would take the tack that it's not going to, jobs are going to change to the point. I agree with that. And there are always going to be things that need humans to do. But to take the humanist side to this, I guess it would be, is that there are going to be so many people on earth. Are there going to be jobs for them to do? I mean, I understand that the machines are going to have to be coded, that things are still going to have to be built to put the machines together and things like that. But as we start to replace physical labor, what are all these people because you can't have every other person being a lawyer. I mean, we're already seeing, in my mind, what that does to us. It makes our courts filled with frivolous lawsuits and everything else so that these people have work so that they can make money. But that's where I'm coming from. And I'm not anti-technology, but I'm not so sure. I'm just bringing up the other side of this here is that will there be enough work for all the people that are going to be on the planet when we see the population growth that is expected by 2050 and by 2100? If we continue with new technology, with machines doing more and more of the physical, my famous online air quotes that nobody can see, the physical labor part. And it brings up that discussion of economics of a universal basic income. Because I do agree, because I see people that are programmers, coders. You have to have mechanics that can fix the robots, and they talk about my friends that are in the car industry, how many times a year Ford or somebody sends them somewhere to learn how to work on the new engines and the new exhaust systems and everything else that are going on. So I do agree that there's still going to be jobs available, but how many jobs where there'll be blue collar type jobs that are available that you don't have to have some kind of real technical, will it be enough to employ everybody? I guess.
Well, I'm sure that these same discussions were held 4 decades ago, right? And 3 decades ago and 2 decades ago. And we're going to have the same discussion a decade from now. I just believe that, things just change and the job market's changed. I don't see the jobs going away. I see them changing. And to your point, I don't really buy into the universal base pay. I believe that the caveat to it all is our education system. That's what's really got to change in order to accommodate and create opportunity for people.
This whole topic it was funny that you brought up quantum computing and stuff, and we can end it on this. The book by Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella is called Hit Refresh. And if you haven't read it, I'd recommend picking up a copy. He's a little lengthy in a few areas I don't think are necessary. It's not that long of a book, but he ends the book by talking about that very subject and how Microsoft is spending time and money and energy on quantum computing and how they're looking to address the question and the concern of how will this next level of computing, which really none of us have a great grasp on exactly how powerful it will be. We already are amazed at the power of what a computer can do today. But when we leave this binary realm and enter this quantum realm, how will things change? And there's a lot of great thoughts about it. But at the end of the day, it'll just be a matter of, we have to get there. So far, history tells us, right? I mean, that's what we're looking at with the data here, that technology is always a net positive for people. It's always, at the end of the day, economically, it's always of benefit. The question will be, does history change at some point? And if so, how do we handle it when it does? What do we do with these people that are supplanted from jobs and no longer can work because they're not trained to work? And that's where it goes back to your point, John, about education. Lance and I have had that conversation for a while about we really have to change this whole way that we think about education as K through 12 or post-secondary, and we don't think about it as a lifelong preparing people to learn for their life, being ready to problem solve. And I think that's where this conversation takes us. But we want to know your thoughts at home. So at TrueChat.org, Facebook, Twitter, etc. Let us know if you disagree with these points. And maybe Lance will have to have Scott Santons back on, an advocate of universal basic income. He's over doubled his Twitter following since, what was that, a year and a half ago when we had him on. He's got like 80,000 followers now on Twitter, and that's what he tests the idea of it. He basically lives on what he advocates the basic income should be. And so he's like a living example of it, is what he kind of tries to show people. It's fascinating, but Lance and I both were kind of like, well,
or John, I just threw it out there and we get a strong opinion coming back.
I know.
And I like that. I mean, that's what makes it fun to talk and discuss, is that we get open on honest conversations and you get to hear different views of thought. Because when I said, I think we need to have that discussion, I was not, advocating for it necessarily, right. But I liked how strongly John responded. And that makes it fun in here. I love that this third person. It reminds me of some fun times. So,
well, if all of you enjoyed it, you'll have to let us know and we'll, demand that John return to the show. So,
oh boy.
Well, see, yeah, we kept it business today. We'll have to go over.
I was trying to be professional, and then I got somebody punny. So now I know I can come in and be my regular punny self. Yeah, we can try to top each other and drive you crazy.
Oh, that'll be great. On second thought, we'll have to reevaluate having John back. I don't know if we can work with his agent. He was a little tough. So,
oh, maybe I need to hire his agent.
Yeah,
because my agent's not doing well. I mean, I am getting a Werther's now along with my water, but that's right. It's about as far as I'm getting.
Well, but now you have to read the mission again. So,
I know.
Speaking of which, where can people listen to this?
You good in front of company? I have to do this.
Yeah.
Oh man,
the pressure's on.
Well, we got Spotify.
Yep.
And we got Stitcher.
No.
And Apple Podcast.
Yes.
And anywhere fine podcasts are found.
Nailed it.
See, I wanted to look good in front of the guest.
You had to perform. Yeah. So now, ladies and gentlemen,
I read it every time.
You know, yeah, he does.
I don't leave it to chance.
No hands.
No hands. I did it.
I did it without anything.
Now we know he can do it though. So, so on Friday when we ask him to do it, if he messes it up, we'll know that he's fibbing. So watch him here. Keep us accountable. Thank you all. And thank you, John, for being here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
It's been a joy. It was hard we didn't stay on time, but you know, it was good nonetheless. It's a little challenging with 3 people. So hopefully you all enjoyed it. Let us know your thoughts for the State of Us on True Chat in Urbana. I'm Justin T. Weller.
I'm Lance Jackson.
And I'm John Umstead.
Thank you so much. We'll see you next time on The State of Us. Be the change.